70 years before Agincourt, on a ridge in northern France, the chivalry of Europe rode to its doom. In a single evening, a defending English army shattered the greatest army of knights in the world and changed how wars would be fought for the next 200 years. This was the day the legend of the English longbow was born, the day a 16-year-old boy became a soldier. This is the Battle of Crécy. It began with a crown. Edward III of England claimed he was the rightful king of France, and in the summer of 1346 he landed an army in Normandy to make that claim in blood. What followed was a chevauchée, a great raid of fire and plunder. The English stormed and sacked Caen, burned their way almost to the gates of Paris, and left a trail of smoke across the richest land in Europe. But Edward had stirred a giant. King Philip of France gathered the largest army he could muster and set out to crush the invaders once and for all. With the French closing in, Edward found himself cornered against the rivers of the north. At the last possible moment, his army forced a dangerous tidal ford, the Blanche attack, and slipped across before the trap could close. But he could not run forever. His men were tired, the French were many, and a battle was now certain. So Edward did the boldest thing a hunted commander can do. He stopped running. He chose his ground, a gentle ridge beside a village called Crécy, and turned to face the storm. Look at the ground he chose, because Edward was a master of it. He drew up his army on the slope of a ridge, with woods and a village guarding his flanks, so the French could not get around him. And then he did something that shocked the age. He ordered his knights and noblemen to climb down off their horses and fight on foot, shoulder to shoulder with the common soldiers. On the wings, angled forward, he massed his real weapon, thousands of English and Welsh longbowmen. From a windmill on the hilltop, the king watched and waited, and on the right wing he placed his 16-year-old son, Edward, the Black Prince, in command of his very first battle. The longbow was no ordinary weapon. Drawn from a 6-foot stave of yew, it took a lifetime of training and savage strength to pull, and in skilled hands it could loose 10 arrows a minute, a falling storm of bodkin points. Facing them, the French brought their own missile troops, thousands of Genoese crossbowmen, the finest mercenaries money could buy. But the crossbow, for all its power, was painfully slow, perhaps 2 bolts a minute. And on that fateful afternoon, the Genoese marched to battle with a fatal handicap. Their great shields, the pavises that should have protected them, had been left behind in the baggage train. Then the heavens opened. A sudden storm soaked the field, and as it cleared, the Genoese advanced up the slope. They loosed a volley, and it fell short. Then the English archers drew, and the sky went dark. Arrows fell on the exposed crossbowmen like sleet, far faster than they could answer, and with no shields to hide behind, they broke and ran. And here the French committed the first of many follies. Enraged at their fleeing mercenaries, the French knights spurred forward and rode straight through their own men, cutting them down as cowards. The greatest army in Europe had begun to destroy itself. Now the flower of French chivalry charged. Up the muddy slope they came, into the teeth of the arrow storm, disordered, furious, magnificent, and doomed. The longbows maddened and dropped the horses. The dismounted English line held firm and cut down the knights who reached it. And then they came again and again. By tradition, 15 or 16 charges broke against that ridge, wave after wave, deep into the darkness of the night. Each one ended the same way, in a wall of arrows and a heap of the fallen. The French had courage to spare. What they did not have was an answer. In the thick of it stood the 16-year-old Black Prince, in the hardest fighting of the day. When the press grew desperate, a knight was sent galloping to the king on his windmill hill, begging him to send help to save his son. And the chronicler of Froissart tells us that Edward refused. "Is my son dead or hurt?" he asked. Told the boy still fought, the king replied, "Let him this day win his spurs, for I will that the glory of the day be his." It is a story told decades later, half legend, but the heart of it is true. The boy held, and he held until the French broke. And then there is the story that has haunted Crécy for 7 centuries. Among the French host rode John of Bohemia, a king grown completely blind with age. Refusing to sit out the battle, he asked his knights to tie their horses' bridles to his, so that he might ride into the fight with them and strike one blow with his own sword. They charged into the dark together, and in the morning they were found together, the old blind king dead among his knights, their horses still tied, one to another. Legend says the prince honored his courage by taking his badge, 3 ostrich feathers and a motto, Ich dien, I serve. Historians doubt the tale, but the feathers became the badge of every Prince of Wales from that day to this. When dawn broke over the ridge, the scale of it stunned even the victors. The French dead lay in their thousands, and among them an entire generation of the nobility, a king, 11 princes, dozens of counts and lords, including the king's own brother. The heralds counted over 1,500 knights and noblemen alone. King Philip himself, an arrow through his face and 2 horses killed under him, was dragged from the field and fled into the night. And the English, their losses were astonishingly light, by some counts only a few hundred men. An army had been broken by another, a fraction of its size. And here Crécy keeps one last secret. For centuries everyone thought they knew exactly where the battle was fought, on the ridge between Crécy and Wadicourt. But in recent years the historian Michael Livingston has argued, from the old chronicles and the lie of the land, that the traditional site is wrong and the true field lies elsewhere, further south. The debate is far from settled, but it means that, like Agincourt after it, even the ground where England's longbowmen made history may not be where we have always believed. Some of our greatest victories guard their secrets well. Crécy was not the end of the campaign, but the beginning of its reward. Straight from the battlefield, Edward marched on the port of Calais and besieged it for nearly a year until it fell. Calais would remain an English town for more than 200 years, a dagger pointed at the heart of France. But the greatest prize of Crécy could not be measured in land. On that ridge, a new way of war had been proven, that disciplined common men with bows could destroy the mounted aristocracy of Europe. The age of the invincible knight was ending. The age of the longbow had begun. The boy who had won his spurs at Crécy would become the most feared warrior of his age, Edward, the Black Prince. And the weapon that won his first great victory would go on to win 2 more, that England would never forget at Poitiers, 10 years later, and on a muddy field in 1415 whose name still echoes, Agincourt. It all began here, on a ridge in the dark, with a storm of arrows and a 16-year-old boy, the day the longbow was born. If their story stirred something in you, subscribe to Forged in Albion, and if you haven't yet seen how the legend reached its terrible climax, our story of Agincourt is waiting for you now.